distraction. It's wintertime, but man, they are biting and they're all fat and healthy and just they're pulling hard. It was fun. I had a lot of fun yesterday.
All right, cool.
So
Good.
after
All right.
this, I'll fill you in.
Okay. Yeah, I'll call you back after we're done.
Okay.
I'll leave that in there for the people, and they'll be like, "What? Why didn't you
It doesn't
tell
matter.
us?"
By the time this comes out, it's probably going to
I
be
know.
on anyway. But
Yeah.
yeah. But yeah.
Okay, so anyway, you ready?
Yep.
All right. Well, welcome back to the San Diego Bass Fishing Podcast. Today we have Mr. Craig Taylor, and this is going to be our where we start a kind of a new series with the podcast, or a new element, and we're going to go with technique specific. The other day, I walked into East County Bait and Tackle. Andy Polachek was back behind the counter, and Ryan Sullivan was there, and I posed them a question. I said, "What's the hottest technique in San Diego? What's happening in San Diego?" And I was ready for any answer essentially. And Andy, they both agreed that East County Bait and Tackle sells a lot of minnows, a lot of jighead minnows, which we'll get into later with Craig here. But and I was like, well, okay, that's it. I said, Ryan or Andy, who do I need to talk to? And it literally immediately came up with Craig Taylor. There wasn't Jake. There wasn't anybody else. He was like, you know what? Craig comes in here all the time. He's going out there every week. He's doing the deal, and he's on top of it. And he's way into the tackle that he's using, solid tip rods, blah blah blah. And he's lived up to the hype, as in he's placed in tournaments doing this and with big fish. Right?
Yeah. It's it's, I think, well, I don't even remember what tournament, but I got that 7.5 pounder in the,
yeah.
Was it the last team series? I think it was the last team series of the year, or forever.
It was kind of, yeah, it was kind of late. It was the last, last one to Cap anyway. That's right. Yeah. You guys only had 4 fish. We struggled that day, but you guys came in with a decent bag.
Yeah. We had 4 fish with, like, I think less than 30 minutes to go.
Yeah.
And John caught our final fish, and thank God, we would have been middle of the pack probably without that 3.5 pounder.
You would have been middle of the pack without that 7 pounder caught on a jig minnow.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was funny too, because I caught that fish. We'd been on some other stuff before, and it was just kind of one of those deals where we were fishing rock, structure fishing, and just every now and then we just poke outside and just kind of give it a look and see if it's happening yet.
Mm-hmm.
I happened to go out there one time, and it was kind of looking like it, but we're also trying to protect our bank spot. So I kind of poked out there, and I saw 2 fish swimming side by side under some bait, and I said, well, it's now or never. And it bit, and John thought it was a catfish at first. He's like, no way. And I did too. I was like, it's just too heavy. I just couldn't move it. Yeah. Just sat there and just pulled drag instantly. And I was like, catfish do this too,
Yeah.
We've caught a lot of suspended catfish back in the days. So luckily it was.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump into it. Let's start with tackle. And let's just start from the bottom. What do you have tied on the end of your line?
Well, I would say 90% of the time I'm running one of these, the Jackal drift fry.
Oh, no kidding. Okay, so what size is that?
This is the 3-inch.
Oh, nice.
I like to run, there's different versions of this. If you're gonna go out and get some or find some of these, get the elastomer ones.
Okay.
They're a little more pricey, but you'll catch 10 fish on one.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a no-brainer for me because these things are hard to find.
They're super hard to find. We had them in the shop. We have a version in the shop, but it was only a 4.5-inch and a 5-inch. It was the bigger
Mhm.
ones, and
Yeah.
I didn't like the colors. I got a couple of packs, but I wasn't too impressed so far.
Yeah. So this thing, the drift fry, it's a combination of things. I think it's not just the bait, obviously. For me, a big part of it has been the jig head that I use and what I want to get out of each bait.
Mhm.
And with the drift fry, one thing I like about them is their ability to roll and flash in place.
Right.
So when the fish are more active, like fall and kind of the post spawn, when they're just zooming and racing all over, I don't feel like that flash and roll is important, because you kind of want something that's darting around a little bit more and is a little
Right.
more active. So when that's the case, the hog farmer spunk shad, that's probably 90%
Yeah.
what I'm using when it comes to that faster moving. And that's more of a up and down presentation. It's not as much of that kind of hover in place and flash side to
Mhm.
side. So when the fish are moving faster, I'll do that, and I'll usually run like a 3/16 ounce jig head.
Okay.
So that's the main things. But when I'm running this little drift fry right here, I've tried a bunch of different hooks. I've tried the range roller jig heads, and they're good, but this has been my favorite right here. It's made by Ryugi. It's the Vespa.
Hmm.
They're tungsten heads. So they're really small, low profile. They're unpainted too, which I don't know if it makes a huge difference, but for me, I always like kind of that muted, almost matte finish on most everything.
Hmm.
You're getting enough flash out of your minnow if by changing colors and stuff. I don't want to add to just something different looking or weird that's kind of breaking up the profile of your minnow. I'm trying to keep everything as natural as possible, for the most part. And the one of the main reasons why I like this jig head too is that it's got kind of it's got like the horizontal line tie. I don't know if you can even see that, but when you tie a loop knot on that with
So that's
the
a flat eye?
yeah, yeah, see, like when you're looking down it, you can see
Oh,
the
no
ocean.
kidding. Oh, wow. Yeah, that's different.
So what that does is I have
Oh,
one.
you're throwing some juice. You're spilling
Yeah,
some tea.
I'm giving out some stuff, but I mean it's what it is. I mean, this podcast is to help as a guide. I'm here to help. I'm here to teach. The tournament aspect of things is just fun, but this is what I like to do. I like to show people what I'm doing, and
Yeah.
all you do is ask. I'm always truthful. If you ask me what I'm doing, I'll tell you. So what I do is I tie a loop knot to
Okay.
that. And so having that side to side, it kind of rolls back and forth on there naturally. So when you're shaking that rod tip, that bait wants to bounce side to side on its own. So you can like cast it out there, watch your minnow sink to whatever depth you want, and you can just it's not a lot, you're not doing this. You're just kind of just shaking the rod tip on slack line, and that's
Yeah.
making the bait just literally just hover,
Okay.
barely in
Oh,
place.
okay. I got a couple of questions already for you.
Okay.
What kind of loop knot is that? That's a knot and slip loop knot?
I don't even know what it's called, to be honest. I've been tying
Does
it.
it, if you come tight to it, or if you pull hard enough on it, will it slide down to the eye of the hook, or
No,
is it stationary? It's
it's
like
stationary.
static.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's static, and it's super easy to tie.
Yeah.
And it's almost like an arbor knot. So
Okay.
you're kind of you make just a like a granny knot in your line. You leave about an inch or two, however much you need of
Uh-huh.
your end. You go through, pull it through the eye of the hook, and then you go back through that opening you left with the granny knot.
Yep.
You wrap up 2 or 3 times, and then you take that tag in and you push it right back through that opening, and it all comes back together.
Right. Yeah, I just saw that on let's see, Randall Tharp just promoted that same knot on one of his channels.
Really? Yeah,
Yep. Same one.
it works. It's strong. I mean, you can pull on it really hard. I
Oh,
mean, not that you're pulling very hard on this,
yeah.
at least for me. I know everybody does things differently, but for me, I'm I'm usually on the more finessey side of things when it comes to the jighead minnow deal. Which I'm sure you'll probably ask, more about when it comes into the tackle side
Yeah.
of things. But especially with these hooks, these jig heads, I don't know if you can tell that how fine of a wire that is, but it's super fine wire, but it's got that silky finish. It's almost like nano coat.
Yeah.
So you don't need a heavy rod to get the hook, even when you're out there 70, 80 feet away.
Yeah.
The fish bites.
Yeah.
You got them.
Yeah.
You got them. You don't need to set the hook. You just wind into them and they're there and they don't come off. If you get a hook, if you get one of these in that fish, it's not coming off. I mean, I say that, but you're really your loss ratio is very, very small. So it's been tried and true. I've caught a lot of big fish. I've caught tons of fish on it, and I don't know if I'll find anything better. I wish they made it a bigger size, but 3/32 ounce is the biggest I've found in it so far.
Okay.
But I'll go between that and a 16th ounce. I prefer to use 16th ounce, but when the fish are moving around, it falls almost too slow. So it's more of a dead of winter, flat, calm, perfect conditions.
Okay.
With that 16th ounce, because you really can float it there in place a little bit better.
Yeah.
Obviously, but yeah, 3/32 is pretty much it. Or I'll go with the 3/16 or quarter ounce with the bigger spunk shad if the fish are moving around a lot, or if I'm just trying to catch bigger fish. If I'm kind of focusing on a structural element like a brush pile or a tree top or something where I know I'm not really looking at the fish, I'm not chasing the fish. I just want something big and enticing to go over the top of a rock or something and see if I can draw something out of it. There's that, because it's not always just staring at dots on the screen. It's also, lining up your cast on something, whether or not you see a fish on it.
Yeah. I mean, my A-rig game is all about that. It's like finding a rock or bush or whatever and sending that A-rig over the top of it and seeing what I can pull out of it.
Isn't it so nice being able to do that?
No, it's yeah.
I mean, God, I've gone through so many A-rigs just casting it and just kind of guessing, like I think it's about 20 feet there, and then all of a sudden the line stops and you're like, whoops, and then you're
it was at San V when it really came into play for me, of course. I mean, at Cap, you can kind of get away with it. Like there's so much rock and you're just not a lot of brush. You can just let it sink out and hit the bottom and wind it in. But San V, man, I mean, obviously you can't do that. So that was the real game changer there.
I mean, it's insane at San V that there's so few places in that lake that you can cast out and not have to worry about being in brush. I mean, it's just the whole bottom is just a layer of brush pretty much. And it's finding the brush that's more spaced out than others a lot of times is where you're finding fish, as opposed to the banks that are just so filled with brush. You get those ones that have little gaps in between, and it's not much, but those little gaps, they love those gaps.
Yeah. They love the open areas.
Yeah.
Yep.
So.
Okay, so what line are you attaching your jigs to?
So
what pound
90%
test?
of the time I'm running 6-pound fluoro sunline.
Ooh.
Yeah. Because I'm not sure. I don't know. It could be different for anybody, but for me, I feel like the stealth aspect, obviously, light line, but I feel like the movement of the minnow is just much more natural on a light line. There's less drag on it. There's less things to make it rise up as you're fishing it out there. And to be honest, when you're doing this in open water, I mean, I don't care. Hook a fish over 60 feet of water and let it swim. Where's it gonna go?
I totally agree with you. As long as they're not going to swim down into a tree or something. And I mean, even then but Jim was really leery of that. My partner, he's super leery of 6-pound, 7-pound, 5-pound. And I started showing him, I'm like, he's like, what are you throwing it on? I'm like, thin Cincos on 6 pound or whatever, and this and that. He's like, man, that's really light. I said, yeah, but I'm not losing any. I'm just winding them in, or or just let them run a little bit. It's not that big a deal. It works. It works.
And it's,
Yeah.
the line now, especially Sunline. I mean, I've been using Sunline pretty exclusively for 15 years now, I feel like,
Are you just using sniper, or do you have a preference like shooter or?
I just use sniper because I'm just running short leaders anyway.
Yeah.
When it comes to this, and even, if I'm fishing worm and stuff like that, I'm just using sniper 90%. I'm not that technical as well. You need shooter for a crankbait or this.
Right.
I don't care. Line's line, just don't break.
Yeah.
And there is one line that I will use sometimes. It's their camo fluorocarbon, the Sunline. So I forget what it's called, Vanish or something. It's
okay.
And it's almost got a metered look to it, but it's fluoro, and it's got like a green to clear to brownish.
Yeah.
Tint. And I do actually use that a lot at San D when the water's really clear.
Yeah.
I don't know if it makes that big of a difference, but in my head it does. So
which is confidence. It increases your confidence.
Is the number one thing. So yeah, so I do use it a lot there, but I haven't noticed if it's getting me more bites or less. I don't know. But so yeah,
it all adds up.
What's that?
It all adds up. Every little piece adds a little more, 1 or 2 fish here and 1 fish here, and maybe you get a bigger bite.
Exactly.
I think it all adds up.
Start spinning your wheels, and you start getting flustered or think, well, maybe it's this or maybe it's that, and it's with fishermen, we notoriously overthink things.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And I know that from mainly my experience of fishing with John, because he's just got so much confidence in what he's doing. He doesn't really overthink the little details like I do. I'm like, man, my worm's got to be perfectly straight.
Oh yeah.
Is the hook too big? Is it too small? And I go down the wormhole while John's just there fishing and catching them, and I'm like, oh, I'd get more bites if I did this, or
Yeah.
So yeah, if you're confident in what you're doing, and you're probably going to catch more fish because you're not worried about changing a bunch of stuff on the water. You're just sticking with what you know.
Yeah. So then you got so you're using what, like a 3-foot leader, or and does it depend on if it's dirty or not?
4 or 5 feet. I don't.
Okay.
If it's dirty or not, I don't. I just keep it about the same. I mean, once I start, if I cut off and retie a bunch of times, when my leader starts getting probably under, 3 feet, then yeah, I'll change it.
Okay.
But I'm not really worried because I'm also using like lighter braid. I'll usually use 8 or 10 pound braid, and I don't use the bright green stuff. I've been using the Sunline, that metered braid that they have now.
Yeah.
Overwatch.
Oh yeah. Okay.
So it's got kind of that metered look, and it does have some fluorescent green, but it also has more of that camo army green mixed in. It just breaks up the profile. And to be honest, if you're looking up at something, if you white braid or fluorescent, it doesn't matter when you're looking up.
Right.
The lighter the braid, it actually blends into the sky and the background better than like the dark green camo. So I'm not so worried about that fact. I think once they get locked in on that minnow and they're staring at it, and as well as I do, how many times you have a fish chase that thing for 50 feet on it. I mean, your minnow disappears on live. You're like, why isn't he eating it? Eat it, and then all of a sudden, you'll just see him just go whoop and swim away. Like, I mean,
you just get a little too close to the boat.
Yeah, they just had to have their nose right on that thing's tail.
Yeah.
So yeah, once they get locked in on the minnow, I don't think it matters. I mean, I'll fish 10 pound on these sometimes, especially if San V, which where I know the water's usually more clear,
Mm-hmm.
but I know that the trees become a big liability there. So I like to be able to pull on them a little harder once you do get the bite.
Right.
So
Okay.
that's
So speaking of which, now, what's your rod and reel setup, but mostly like your rods, because I know
so
you dove into this.
yeah. So I use two rods, um, just depending on the size of the minnow. Like, obviously one's heavier and one's lighter, but they're both very similar. I'm using for my light duty stuff, like up to 1/8 ounce maybe, is the Shimano X Pride.
Okay. Yeah.
The 610 medium. And
Yeah.
that's the one, it's got the solid tip, the stinger tip. That, for anybody out there, because I'm sure there's a lot of people that have no idea what a stinger tip is still,
Right.
what
Right.
it does. But it's almost like an ugly stick. Honestly, it's a very, very light action piece of a rod, usually about 1 foot or so on the rod, that blends into the actual backbone of the rod. So
Right. It's a solid piece.
yeah, it's like
That stinger is solid.
Yeah, completely solid. The rest of the reel or the rod is a tube, as any other fishing rod is.
Right.
But the main thing is for that is to just control that minnow, because if you have too stiff of a rod and you're shaking it, out at the end of your rod, you may think you're just barely tapping it, but it's moving like this, and that's causing the minnow to do all kinds of weird stuff underwater that you don't want. But so the stinger tip kind of absorbs a lot of that angler input and just tones down what you're doing, and it translates to what the minnow's doing. So you're not overworking that thing,
Yeah.
And kind of a happy byproduct of that I've learned, because when I first started doing this, I was that guy that was setting the hook before the fish was biting.
Yeah.
It took me a while to just wait to feel that fish load up, because when you see them rocket up for that minnow,
Yeah.
and they're coming hell bent, and you're shaking it, you're like, he's got to have it, and you pull it away from him or something and completely miss fish. These stinger tips, they load up nice and slow, and they kind of set the hook on themselves.
Okay.
So I don't do that anymore. Now it's just kind of like you're shaking it and you're reeling, and all of a sudden it just kind of gets heavy, and that's it. So so it kind of helps you as an angler, I guess. It takes off some of those.
So since we're I don't want to miss this point, but can you tell us what a bite is like on a jighead minnow?
90% of the time, it's just mush.
It's nothing.
It's
right?
nothing. It just turns into weight, and if you weren't sitting there, if you weren't staring at the screen and watching it happen, I feel like it would get heavy, and you'd just be like, what is that? Because you really they don't pop it. You usually don't feel the tick or the thump. Oh, not always. Sometimes you do. When they're really fired up, sometimes they pop it hard and you feel it. But usually when you're shaking a minnow like that, you've got slack in your line going anyway while that's happening. So you usually don't feel that initial bite. It's not like when you're fishing a spy bait or something, and you have tension constant on that line and your rod, because a lot of rods have the sensitivity doesn't come in until you put a little bit of load on it.
Yeah.
So it's not like that. It just gets heavy.
Yeah.
And that's another reason why I like these thinner, little low profile hooks, because I want the hook to do all the work for me. I don't want to have to drive a hook set. I just want them to eat that thing and feel like they just ate a minnow and they're swimming off to the next one. And that's the way it feels a lot of times. It feels like that fish came up behind it or from under it, ate it, and just swam away with it. And it just gets heavy. And then all of a sudden it pulls back, and then they realize, whoops, I made a mistake. Because very rare that you get like a pop or a thump and they're not there and you don't have them dead to rights. It does happen occasionally, but usually not. Usually if your rod's loading up, it's because they are trying to swallow that thing and go on to the next one.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay,
so, yeah,
cool.
Pretty much have them at that point.
So what's your other rod? You said you had two.
Oh yeah. So the other one is this the Mega Bass. It's the Orochi X10, the Medusa.
Oh, that's the new one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this one, same thing. It's got the solid tip. You can see it's got a lot of flex right there. And then this one's got a lot more backbone than the X Bride.
Okay.
So when I'm fishing, like right now, I've got the, that spunk shad rigged up on a 3/16 ounce jig head.
Yeah.
And this one's got a heavier hook. It's just a bigger bait, so you need that backbone.
Yeah.
But you need to tone down that rod so that you're not doing this and having that thing just kind of do wacky. Sometimes wacky's good, but usually not. Not when you got a bass tracking that thing and staring at it. I've plenty of times I thought, oh man, if I give it a nice hard pop, that's going to make them commit and they're going to eat it. And then they see that and they just dive to the bottom.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Like I get more bites just shaking it on a steady, slow retrieve than trying to impart a whole bunch of weird stuff.
Yeah. Are those, both of those rods, are they both under 7 foot?
Yeah, I think they're both 6'10".
Okay.
I think this one's 6'10", I believe so. 6'11".
Yeah. So is there a reason for that shorter rod?
For me, it's casting accuracy.
Yeah.
Most of the casts that I make are just little kind of like roll casts, either from the side, from underneath, underhand pitches. I'm not really overhand bombing it as far as I can. Most of these fish are within 40 feet of the boat, I'm not making long casts. I don't need to. I need to be accurate. I want to be able to see that bait splash on my live, and I want to watch it fall and know exactly where it is and what it's doing and when to stop it. If I'm going to let it drop below the fish and then bring it up, or am I going to hover it 5 feet over? Just depending on their mood, you'll see what they want, If I'm going to cast, 15 feet, 20 feet past it and then reel it fast and then drop it on them so that the splash isn't so much of a deal, because that's been a thing now. Those fish, they hear a splash, man, and they're over it. They're getting very used to hearing that, and I think they're starting to associate that little bloop over their head with bad things, and they're reacting accordingly. And for the most part, but 3-4 months ago at Otay, see a school of fish down 20-25 feet, and as soon as that thing splashed, you would just watch them rocket up and just murder the thing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I guess there's times where they just get stupid and they just forget, I guess. I don't know why, but for the most part, now that splash is definitely affecting the fish. They're a little leery of it.
Yeah. So what's your reel size?
I just use just a 2500. I'm using Vanford's.
Yeah.
The Shimano Vanford, the 2500, because I have played around with using a 3000 size because they do cast a little bit better.
Yeah.
Bigger spool, the line comes off a little smoother.
Yeah.
But I noticed that I don't really need that as much because I'm not making those big bomb casts with this. This is more of like a surgical strike, as opposed to, I need a scalpel, not a machete for this. So that's kind of my theory on is.
I kind of use the same examples of when people ask me how do you break down a lake, or what are you doing, or what are you doing, like the club members mostly.
Mhm.
They'll ask me. And I said, well, I go in and I cover water and I'm making big strokes. I'm making big wide strokes. I don't have a little pin or a fine little brush. I use this great big brush and I'm taking big strokes and I'm just looking for bites.
Yeah.
I'm looking for reaction. And then those reactions, then I'll pare it down and fine tune it to tournament day and try to get those bites. But
Yeah.
I got to find them first. You got to find them,
Yeah.
but it's the same kind of thing, you gotta, I like that machete. I like that term.
Yeah.
That was a good one.
And that's, that's just my mindset on it is just trying to be more surgical, more precision oriented. Because I mean, if they're really schooled up and they're going crazy, then you don't really have to worry about fishing a minnow. At that point, you put a spoon out there or
Right.
something. When they're balled up like that, and you just get anything close to them and rip it through the school, they're gonna eat something, and I'm probably gonna have a spinning rod in my hand at that point. So,
Right. Yeah.
so this is more for getting those hard-earned bites where you're really paying attention to one or two fish at a time and not
Yeah.
big schools.
So let's see here. That was great. That was awesome. I'm really glad you gave me that breakdown of your tackle and stuff. That was a lot of insight there. And I know the people will appreciate it too. There's a lot of questions on this whole jig head minnow thing and a lot of so as far as technique goes, now obviously this is a forward facing technique. You're using sonar to do this most of the time. And you're just going out and targeting single fish, or you can target schools of fish. And how do you know when to keep it above 5 feet above the school or that fish?
I just kind of just gauge their attitude once. Obviously, when I first start, if I say, okay, this is what I'm going to do for right now, and like just like a lot of other things with fishing, is I know when to abandon it. I know when you're just beating a dead horse, because you'll go out there on certain days and you'll, like I said, when you get those casts, when it splashes over their head and you watch them just disperse or just swim back down to 25, 30 feet and just sulk. Like, man, they're not into it. Am I really going to just float around out here all day and try and do this? No, I'm going to go to the bank and I'm going to do what I would rather be doing, to be honest. Because I don't enjoy doing this. I just know it's kind of like, you can't beat them, join them. You got to learn.
Yeah.
And one thing I'll do is when I first start seeing fish and I scanning around, I'm like, okay, there's bass. I see one or two right here. I'll cast to them and I'll just see what I can get away with. I'll let that minnow fall right on their head and and see what they do. And if they, more times than not, they'll just sit there and just watch it fall right past their face. Because I like to when I'm gauging their attitude, I like to see if they swim down for it, not up for it. If they swim down for it, to me, that shows more interest. I think they're happier looking up for something. And if they're willing to actually chase something down, then I feel like, okay, these fish are maybe a little more interested.
Like you throw a drop shot past them and they follow it down to the bottom.
And
it's like, that's gonna bite.
Here it comes. It happened.
Get the net.
It happened yesterday to me. I saw some suspended fish and I cast out a drop shot and I watched it go down. I didn't go right through the middle of them, but they were close. And as it went down, I saw one just go.
Yeah.
And it hit the bottom. I couldn't see it after that because it kind of went down into some rock. And I just reeled up my slack and I just like, here it comes. And sure enough, it's so, when they get in that mood, it's really fun. You're like, I'm going to catch that fish. I'm just waiting for the bite,
Yeah.
So I like to do that. Other times I will, if I see they're not interested in that, then that's when I'll start floating it right over their head or right in front of them. And I'll see if I can get them to turn on it, because you can't always tell what direction they're facing if they're just spinning. But sometimes if you drop it on this side of them and they're facing the other way, you'll watch them turn.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they turn fast and they'll leave that little wake trail next to them. And if I see that, then I know like that fish is on high alert. He's looking for something. And whether or not he eats, you know, that just shows me, okay, that fish is interested. It didn't swim away. It got fired up. It looked like it wanted it, or it chased it for a couple feet and then it lost interest.
Mm-hmm.
Then I know at that point, then it's probably a matter of changing the bait to get that bite.
Yeah.
You know, like whether it's downsizing or different profile minnow or something like that. And there's a few rotations that I'll go through, and it's just based on what I feel like I'm seeing from the fish or what they're telling me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it's all a guessing game because I don't know. I'm not a fish. I'm just seeing what I'm seeing on the screen, and I'm making my best judgment as to what the conditions are like, what time of year it is, and then I'm kind of like, well, the other day that bass that I caught spit up shad that were this big.
Mm-hmm.
Well, maybe they want something even smaller. So that's when I'll like switch to like something like the bass tricks, you know, the little flash tricks on a jig head or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
To me, this is probably one of the best ones when it comes to them being really finicky.
Super finessey. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll go with that. And the reason why I typically don't like to throw the bass tricks is just because they don't last very long on a jig head.
Right.
2 fish max usually.
Yeah.
And even if you're gluing them to your jig head,
right,
it doesn't matter because they're hollow. The hook rips through them and they don't sit right.
Right.
They, you know, if it's not swimming perfectly straight, they don't eat it.
Yeah.
They don't eat it. So I tend to keep those as like my last resort. But you and I both know these guys.
Right. Yeah.
They're hard to beat. They're cheap.
They're good.
They're easy to find, and
they're cheap.
They still eat them.
And they eat, yeah.
And they last. They'll last 3 or 4 fish on one of because it's a solid body. So
yeah,
that's another thing I'm looking for, and also of course the old tried and true.
Right. We just ordered some more of those at the shop. Which we didn't even have them. And Mike asked me today, he's like, what do you need from Demiki? And I was like, dude, we need what the heck? Armor shads. We need armor shads. He's like, oh yeah, okay. So what size? I said 3-inch. They make a 2.5, but I think you probably sell more 3s at the shop. And so I think he ordered them today. Because there was only one place and we could get them at Hooked, and Hooked's gone.
Is it?
Yeah. Hooked tackle is gone. They're out of business. So
like speaking on the armor shad, you know, like this bait was obviously it was first, I think, designed for the more of that just vertical style.
Yeah, the Demiki head. It was supposed to go on the Demiki jig head.
You literally just drop it down back in TD Sonar days, and you stroll it along just under the boat, and you
like an ice jig.
Yeah, and that's the shape of that head with that kind of like a sled to balance it out. But I like to use this with the Demiki head rig when they're really active, because you can pop this thing and it's almost like an ice jig because of that flat bottom. It kind of planes.
Yeah.
Like when you jerk it up, it kind of wants to like spin and
it does
glide.
Yep.
So that's another one of those, like if you're casting into active fish, it's really hard to beat that. I mean, I don't do as good when it's that real slow, just trying to entice a fish to bite. But if they're schooling, do that. And
that's the second thing I have to my ice jig. Like I'll have the ice jig, maybe a couple of ice jigs, and then I'll have a Demiki rig. So that it seems like when I quit getting bites on the ice jig, and then I can throw a Demiki down there, and it maybe sinks a little bit slower, and in a spiral fall, then it, But that's a different scenario too. That's ice jigging. And schools and whatever.
Yeah. And I mean, that's definitely been really productive. I mean, I remember back in the days taking Jake Evans when he was just a kid out on my old boat and showing him how to use an ice jig at Murray, and
Yeah.
smashing back then on that. And I still haven't, with the new stuff, I haven't been to Murray yet to like actually watch that go down. Like,
Oh yeah.
Oh, but I'm sure it's impressive because I've got some screenshots of my graph from back in those days. Like, looks like yellowtail.
Right. Yeah. It's all spaghetti down there.
Spaghetti. It's just crazy.
Yeah.
You're just dropping down. You're watching your line on the line on the graph go down, and all of a sudden you just watch them come up. So
how about when you're dropping one of the big ones, like a 7/8 or something?
Yeah.
Ice jig, and it's just plummeting down, and they come up to meet it and eat it on the way. As it's coming down, they go up and eat it. Like,
not whoa! And you're like,
yeah,
no, it didn't hit the bottom. Yeah,
it's gonna be good.
Yeah, it's awesome. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I do miss kind of those days of that 2D stuff because I feel like that was kind of a special thing that not a lot of guys really were doing. I mean, I'd go to Murray and it would just be me and one other boat.
Yeah.
And we'd be catching 20-pound bags on ice jig out there in 60 feet of water. Now with forward facing, everyone's doing it. I'm sure it's still good. I'm sure it has its moments, but I don't think it's probably as good as it used to be.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know about Murray. I mean, I go out there and fish it, but I haven't been out lately. I haven't been out this year. As in far as like the Lake Murray season for me would be in the wintertime, and I haven't been out yet.
Yeah, I mean, right now, usually November through December is the time when they're doing their deep.
Yeah.
So I'm sure you could probably go out there and get them, but yeah, I don't know, with the water level, with everything that happened this year, it just seemed like
it was very
like
it fluctuated a lot there.
Or am I just going to waste my time going there? So, and plus, like after having my slow boat forever now, it was like I just want sometimes I just like going and just ripping up on the lake. It's fun to go fast. My old boat topped out at like 40 on a good day, so sometimes it's fun to just go somewhere where you can do some exploring and just check out different spots on lakes and running spot to spot.
Yeah.
Murray doesn't have a lot of that. There's a couple rock piles and
it
can be so stingy. So
yeah. So God, this went great. You have anything else to give us as far as jig minnow goes?
I don't know.
Anything off the top of your head?
No, I think the climate is definitely changing a little bit. I think most guys that are doing it a lot will tell you that it's not what it was a year ago. I mean, I didn't really start actively fishing with the forward facing with the jig and minnow thing until I got the Garmin units.
Right. Yeah. I know you had some issues there.
With the Mega Live, I couldn't see it. I did everything. I did the updates, and it ended up screwing up my transducer and all that stuff. And I went that whole run around, which a lot of people did. But it was one of those things where, yes, I could kind of see a drop shot if I cast it out, and I'd watch it blip in and out of the screen. Like that's just was Hummingbird's thing. It was never a solid thing. And it was grainy at best, and you didn't get the information that you're getting with either the LVS 34, the active target. They're just head and shoulders above what Humminbird was doing. So I tried to do minnow stuff with that, and I couldn't do it because I couldn't see.
It's frustrating. So
once I switched to Garmin, it opened my eyes to like, holy cow, I can actually see what my bait's doing.
Yeah.
Watch it splash and where it's landing, and I can see fish react, and I can actually use this tool the way it should be used, instead of just like, oh, there's a rock there, or there's a tree, and I think there's some fish swimming around it. Now I'm like, I can actually see what my bait's doing. So that really opened my eyes, and that made me really want to, really learn it. So I probably spent a good solid 2 months of where every time I went fishing, that's pretty much all I was doing, was playing
Yeah,
with minnow,
that's what
because
you had in your hand.
I wanted to get good with it.
Mm-hmm.
Now I feel like I've become pretty proficient with it to where I don't feel like I need to practice it anymore, you know. And now it's kind of like, I'll use it when it's necessary, when I feel like it's the time. But 90% of the time, I'm just using it now to look at, like, that's my rock, that's my angle, that's the cast I want to make, and that's it. I mean, you know, I'll go out and chase fish when I feel like it's necessary, but this time of year right now, like they've kind of stopped the schooling now, and it's back to the way I like to catch them, you know, with
So,
grinding.
so, that's what I was going to ask you. Is there a specific season for like a jig minnow? You want to do it in the fall or the springtime or what?
I think I've caught my biggest fish in early spring,
Mm-hmm.
of just before the spawn, because I feel like that's when a lot of fish either are stacking up in main lake points and secondary points trying to move into spawn. But you see a lot of fish, like you go into Caneos and you'll just see bait out there and you'll see fish, but they're not really chasing that bait.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I caught my biggest ones, is when I'm out there looking and I'm seeing like those sheets of bait, and you'll just see one or two blobs
Yeah.
either just below it or right above it.
Mm-hmm.
And the ones that I'm seeing above the bait are the ones that seem to be more willing to bite. I'm not sure why,
Yeah.
but those are the ones this year that I think I caught some of my biggest fish was doing that. And it was just individual fish.
Yeah.
You know, just scan around, you'd see one there and they were just hovering there, suspended. They weren't moving around. So they're easy to target.
Yeah.
You know, they're not zipping around all over the place. And you're like, you know, you make a cast and you're watching your thing fall and you're watching that fish leave the screen and you're like, okay, well, wind up again, let me cast again. And you're just constantly bouncing around trying to do that.
So do you find yourself making multiple casts, the same fish, if they don't bite? I mean, maybe following it as its direction, is it? Do you feel you have to like angle?
Um, you know, I usually don't waste too much time on a fish. If I see that he's pretty much not interested, I'll make 2 or 3 casts at it,
Yeah.
and I give up. I give up on it. I just move on to the next one.
Yeah.
And you know, maybe you can get it to bite, but I just feel like usually the ones that I was seeing out there, they were all bigger fish and they were smart. Like, I just don't think that.
If you feel you put a good presentation over that fish, then and he doesn't bite, then you're just kind of on to the next one.
Yeah.
Instead of, because there's been times in the past for me, I'll see fish maybe swimming away from me or going from right to left or whatever, and I'll put a cast in there and they didn't bite, but I think I just didn't hit them right. You know, I got to lead them a little bit more or whatever, and then all of a sudden on my 4th cast, I finally get them. And
I'll do that if I feel like it's me not placing the cast right. Like,
right. Okay.
If I know that the fish are just moving around and it's like, I cast here, I could be, even though I'm seeing my minnow here and it looks like it's 5 feet away, that fish might be looking the other way. He's got his eyes something else over there and doesn't know. So I'll do it if I think that's the reason. But like what I was just talking about, when I was seeing these fish, they weren't moving.
Yeah.
They were hovering in place and they were not really moving. So I knew that they had to see what I was doing. There's no way that they're not, you know?
Uh-huh.
So after 2 or 3 casts at that, if I'm getting no reaction with the bigger, I'll throw like the bigger bait first at it, and then I'll go to a smaller one. And if that's not happening, then I just move on, because there's not so many of them in that time of year out there doing that.
Yeah.
You know, go into, you know, I'm just using Caneos as an example because it's an easy recognizable cove off the main lake. So you push in and you'll scan around, and in the whole thing that you look at, you might see 2 or 3 fish that are set up like that out there. So I want to, you know, just I want to get through those fish and try, and then go somewhere else and try and find that same scenario elsewhere with different fish.
Yeah.
So I don't like to waste a lot of time with them. I'll come back later, sometimes, and I'll scan around, see if they're still there or if they're still hanging out and doing that. And I'll try again, but I usually don't like to pester them too long because I feel like they're big bass out there and they're smart and they just get in a negative mood and there's nothing you can do to catch them until they're ready. When they're ready, they'll bulldog that thing and eat it, and you'll feel like the greatest fisherman in the world when you're watching that minnow drop and you'll see one just light up and just swim right up and just gulp it. And you're like, oh, and they just,
why can't it be this way every time?
No. And it's just like the light switch, and eventually they bite. And I've been noticing that a lot lately with just the general fishing at Cap right now has been off and on. I mean, there's bite windows throughout the day and you're just nothing. And then all of a sudden it's like, they just go suicidal and it's like, get on a rock pile and it's like every cast. And then it's just done.
Yeah.
And 30, 45 minutes later, it just refires again.
Yeah.
So I just feel like we're just actually seeing that in real life. We're seeing those negative moods in person, because John and I have been fishing offshore, bass fishing for a long time.
Right.
A lot of this stuff isn't really new to us. We obviously hovering a minnow out there is different. We never would have done that without electronics, but we have always fished spy baits, and jighead minnows, like paddle tails, cool baits, stuff like that. We just, you'd go out there on your 2D and you'd see bait, you'd see fish and say, okay, they're down 15 feet below the surface, count it down, wind it in, and you get bites, you catch fish like that. And a lot of people didn't have patience to do that. So that was a big advantage for us. But now forward facing, everybody can pretty much see what's happening out there. And
leveled the playing field.
It did. But it's changing. I feel like it's changing. I don't think it's as effective. And I mean, if the sonar technology keeps getting better, I just feel like these fish are going to just keep getting more educated to it. And I think it's going to make fishing a lot harder in the future, to be honest.
Yeah.
I really do.
So what's your plan this year, Craig? What are you going to be doing fishing wise?
I'm going to do, John and I are going to fish the East County bait and tackle series for sure.
Yeah.
John is actually, he's kind of getting over the whole tournament thing and bass fishing kind of in general. I think he just doesn't get to go that much.
Right. Yeah.
So he's really into hunting.
Right. Yeah.
I think he's going to kind of pursue that route. So I don't think he's going to be doing too many more tournaments besides, he did say he's in for the East County one. But maybe cherry pick one or two here and there, but as far as like tournament fishing, I'm still going to do it. I just, probably going to have to find a new partner if I'm going to like actually fish a series.
Right.
Because when it makes sense to, if you want angler of the year, and the perks of that, it sucks to always have a different partner every time because you miss out on stuff. While it's fun, it's always great fishing with new people and just, doing different things, but finding a partner is tough because John and I fish really well because we just fish so similar.
Right.
Like we're just on the same wave.
Oh yeah.
Always.
Yeah.
So
finding a good partner, somebody that you gel with, is not easy. It's not.
It's not. And there's a lot of decisions that happen during a tournament, and you both
have to be on board.
you kind of good when you trust your partner and be like, I think that's a good call. Let's go do that. Instead of, I don't know, man, I think we should stick around here.
Right.
And you end up shooting yourself in the foot. And that's happened to me before, you know, where it's like, hey man, I want to go. Like, let's go see what's happening on this part. Oh, but we're getting a couple bites here. It's like, yeah, I know we are, but we're not getting the right ones. Like, let's go and do that. And then come to find out, oh man, it was really going off in that section of the lake.
Yeah.
You guys should have been there.
Yeah.
Like, well, I wanted to, but you know, it's
you bite your tongue
because you do have two egos in the boat. That, I mean, if you're a competitive fisherman, you know, you have your opinions and your ideas, and
yeah. So, are you going to do any Western Outdoor News?
Yeah, I think so. I love the U.S. Open. I love Mojave. It's such a cool. I love it there. I just love the desert. It's so much.
Yeah. It's
so much different out there than our landscape. It's just everything about it. It's just pretty. It's a beautiful place, and I like the fact that I can just go 50 miles in one direction. You know, just take it all in. I mean, my best day of the U.S. Open, obviously the U.S. Open didn't go too well for me this year with boat issues, but my last day of practice was my favorite day.
Yeah.
I finally found what I was looking for, I guess. You know, I finally found that aha moment, and I was like,
yeah.
Okay. I was shaking fish off left and right. I was just like, I was like, oh, I'm bit again. God damn. You know, I'm shaking. I cut the hooks off stuff. Had fish swimming around with stuff, and I couldn't shake them.
Yeah. Wow.
I don't want to shake them so hard to where they get weary and weird about what they're doing, but you know, I kind of just kept fishing to where I was like, I've just got to stop. I have to stop. If I'm educating these fish way too much at this point.
Right.
You're like, but there's that one spot right here. I want to see the cast. Like, is there really? It looks just right, and sure enough, boom, you know, and you're like, oh God, come on. And you're scanning your live, and you're looking at it, and you're like, that's a big one.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I kind of found that at around like 10 o'clock in the morning, and that day I was fishing way up north of Cottonwood, and I talked to Chip earlier that day, and him and Kevin Burkhead were up there, and he's like, oh, we're gonna run to Willow Beach and we're gonna go fish for stripers.
Yeah.
So they made that run up there, and I was like, oh, okay. I just want to go look at it. I've never been up there, so I just wanted to go see what it was all about. And it was kind of like there was a weird little overcast to the sky, and I was like, screw it, I'm gonna go up there. It's nice out. I'm gonna go run the canyon and just check it out. So I just ran up there. Just the scenery was unbelievable, and you hit these pockets of cool air because all that water coming in from Willow is much colder, and it just felt amazing. You know, it's just one of those things I'll never forget. You know, I just felt good. I felt confident. Everything was as it should be, and I just like little things like that are enough to keep me coming back. Whether or not I did good, whether or not the boat ran, you know, it's an adventure and it's fun, you know, and you're just doing something out of the normal. We get so used to the same old down here. So it's a good excuse to get outside your comfort zone and go explore. You know? Yeah. So I'd like to do maybe some more of that, especially if I'm not going to fish as many local things, and maybe I might try to go to Clear Lake this year. I want to. Yeah. I want to. I don't know if I'm going to do it or not, or if I can make it happen. You know, I have to schedule and see.
It's far.
It is far, and but I mean, the reward is like, I know if I go out there, I'm probably going to get absolutely smoked. But I think a whole bunch of fish.
He will.
You know,
Jake did good. Jake's done well up there. You know, he kind of figured it out, and the potential's there.
Yeah,
The
it's there.
potential's there. You're going to
I
catch some
mean,
big ones, and a lot of them.
I think I've got as good a chance as anyone if I run into the right thing, But
Yeah.
I also feel like I might have a problem with sore lipping a lot of fish there because it's like a destination spot. Like you want to
I
go there.
know.
You're like, it's the bass factory, man. Like,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
want to go there and you want to catch big fish. I mean, we don't.
Yeah.
San Diego lakes aren't what they used to.
I
It's
know.
not. You catch a 3.5, 4 pounder, and you're doing pretty good these days. It seems like
I know. Yeah.
especially at San V. Yikes.
I know. We got the turkey shoot there on the 28th, which this will probably air. So I'm thinking right now, it's not going to air this week. This episode is not going to air this week. But probably next week, which would be after the 28th. But it'll probably after. So it'll be it'll be a week out or so, at
Yeah.
least a week. Yeah.
So the 28th. Okay. I'm trying to think. I don't think
Yeah,
I have.
that's Saturday. Saturday, a week from yesterday. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'll as long as I don't have anything going on, I'll definitely fish it.
Oh, good.
They're fun, man. It's just
Yeah,
it's
35
so
bucks.
nice. It's a big deal, and it's just a fun time. Like after that last one at Cap, like I just remember how much fun I had. Just it's not so serious. Everyone's just having a good
Right.
time. People are going
Yeah.
by talking, and in the parking lot after, everyone's having their beer, just joking and
Yeah. Yeah.
talking about how the day went. And it wasn't like guys weren't sandbagging each other and saying, "Oh yeah, I did it on this." Like everyone was just honest, and it was a whole different feel than the typical tournament feel. Where
Yeah.
everyone's a little bit guarded.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I try to time these as far as like people have it off, but they didn't go on vacation kind of thing.
Yeah.
And they're still here in San Diego, and what am I going to do? Like the one after Thanksgiving. Well, it's after Thanksgiving, and this one's going to be right after Christmas, 3 days after Christmas. So that's kind of my timing with the whole turkey shoots, and then just being family friendly. Like you can put as many people in the boat as you want, as long as you're legal.
Yeah.
Bring your kids. If you want to have five people in your boat, that's fine. Whatever. You just get to weigh in 5 fish.
I saw that. I was laughing. I think it was. I want to say it was. I think Alex Galvin had like.
He did. Yeah, he did.
It was like a dog, and I was like,
Yeah.
what's going on? I was like, more people could be an advantage, but I think he was at a disadvantage with that many people.
Totally.
I mean, how it is like guiding. Like, sometimes you have three customers on the boat, and it's
Yeah.
kind of chaotic.
Yeah.
You
got too many lines going into one spot.
Exactly. Or
Yeah.
like some guy's casting while another guy's casting, and and you're kind of in the middle ducking and bobbing.
This guy's hung on the bottom, and
Yeah.
you're retying a hook or a leader.
This guy's hung up. This guy's got his stuff in a tree over here, and you're trying to like balance everything. And some other kid's like, "I need a net."
Yeah.
I don't know what to do. It's like being a deckhand all over again.
Right. Yeah.
But it's fun. But I try to keep it at 2 usually.
Yeah, me too. Three's a little much. It gets crowded.
It does.
But
and
two is okay.
If it's like a kid and 2 parents, and if the mom come along just for the day and just hang out, maybe make a couple casts, but is more there to just watch the kid and document the day or whatever. That's
right.
That's, what I mean. Oh, another thing right now too for the guide trip is that the bald eagles have been super active at Cap.
Oh, really?
So if you're gonna have kids on the boat, that's always cool to see.
Oh yeah.
They're super active. They've been hunting those coots.
I saw that last year.
Dude,
I had one just like multiple coming down like time after time, harassing these coots that were on the water, and they just stayed on the water, and as long as they didn't come up, he wasn't going to get one. But he never did. But he kept diving on them and diving on them. Yeah.
Yeah, because right now I don't know if it's has something to do with the amount of the grass that was there growing on the
Hmm.
bank.
Hmm.
When the water was up, that grass line that's on certain sections of the bank,
Hmm.
which were the good banks where all the fish were, and we're losing it now. But the coots have been in there. But I think that there must be some sort of breeding thing that happens right now because they're really bunched up and they're in a flotilla of like 500 of them at a
Yeah.
time, and they're
Yeah.
going like traveling across the lake.
Yeah.
So it's been
Right.
like I'm running the lake, man, and I'm like, dude, I hope I don't Brett Height myself right now. I'm going to get a coot to the face or something because they're there in droves right now, and I think that's why I think the bald eagles are some of them are the ones that were are from San Vicente. I think they've come on
Yeah.
because I've
Yeah.
seen there's like 4 of them now. There's like 2
Yeah.
pairs,
Yeah.
and they're super active. So that's always
I got to see a peregrine. I don't know what it got. It got some kind of duck, but that was pretty cool at Lower Otay the other day.
there was a hawk in the parking lot at East County the other morning. I was there.
Yeah.
Tried to kill a grackle
Oh,
in the
really?
back of the truck. I was sitting in my truck
Really?
and I heard racket in the tail in the bed of my truck,
Oh, you're
and then
kidding.
a hawk like crashing around in the bottom, and then he panicked and flew up to the light post, and I didn't get a good look. It was still kind of dark. It
Yeah.
was just enough gray light to see it was a hawk, and then the grackle came popping out and stood on top of my truck and was like looking around.
Yeah.
Finally flew off, but he almost had a kill in the back of my truck.
Nice.
It was a little hawk. It could have been a falcon because it was small.
Yeah. Yeah.
Small and kind of almost
Yeah.
like a bluish gray color with a little bit of a brownish red kind of on
Yeah.
his chest. I think it might have been a peregrine.
Yeah.
I didn't notice
There's quite a few here in
mustache.
San Diego. I got a picture of them at Otay. There was 2 of them on the same branch,
Oh,
and
really?
one was like picking feathers off the bird that he killed. But
That's awesome.
so,
I think
yeah,
the older I get, man, I'm a bird nerd.
I've seen him and I've heard him hit pigeons at the landing, at Fisherman's Landing or whatever,
Yeah.
and it hit it in the air above. There was in an intersection, and it sounded like somebody had hit a softball, like for a home run, like a whop, and you just massive feathers, and you see the 2 birds like hit the ground, and then the peregrine's like on it.
Yeah.
But
It's great.
yeah, it was a big sound.
Yeah, I've seen those videos of them screaming down. I mean, my first job when I was 15 was at SeaWorld. And
Mhm.
part of my job duties was cleaning up vomit and helping out with, they had the bird show.
Uh-huh.
And so I'd kind of help out with that. And they had the peregrine falcon, and they used to send him up and have him dive.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah, that was super
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
But they're crazy. They're little. They're
Yeah.
not
Yeah, they're not
much
very big.
bigger. I mean, maybe like a pigeon size,
Mhm.
but streamlined.
Yeah, they're taking out birds way bigger than they are.
I guess if you're getting
Ducks
hit
and things.
miles an hour or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because they just come down, and it's crazy. They can even hit birds when they're on the ground and somehow not hit the
Uh-huh.
ground. Come in,
Right.
whap, and it's
Yeah.
like I've seen videos. It's lightning fast.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's crazy. But anyway,
That
birds.
fishing at Otay, that was pretty darn good.
Yeah,
There for a few weeks.
I didn't
4 weeks.
I didn't even make it out there. I wanted to, but with all the tournaments and stuff happening at Cap, I just kind of wanted to
Yeah.
as much as possible. But
Right.
in
Yeah.
the end, it didn't really matter. I still sucked. So
It was so crowded. It was all in the back of Otay. I don't care now because I was out there yesterday. We caught 1 fish yesterday, my daughter and I. And then, but on Wednesday we had 37 before 11 o'clock.
God.
And oh yeah, and it was just every cast. Yeah, I mean you get bit every cast.
Yeah.
Because a lot of it was rattle traps, lipless, off the bottom. Everything was off the bottom.
Just yo-yoing off the bottom.
Yeah, and the guys that everybody would kind of catch them, but nobody was fishing the same way we were. Like,
Yeah.
it was like, not to honk our own horn or anything, but it was like clinic time. It
Yeah.
was game on. And I showed a few people what was going on, and then they started getting with it and they started catching them. But most everybody was like throwing little minnows and A-rigs and doing that kind of thing. And they'd catch them. They catch one here, one there, because they would be busting around. But the meat was on the bottom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's old school style. That's before the forward facing. That's what we used to do at Cap all the time. We'd go out in the back in North Arm and bomb out the rattle trap in the dead of winter and just lift it off the bottom, let it fall, lift it, let it fall, and then all of a sudden you'd go to lift and it just get heavy, or they just as it's fall. We used to throw like the little Georges and Demiki
tail spinners would work. Yeah.
Let it hit the bottom and then just reel it as slow as you could, like just hug in the bottom, and you'd catch them.
Yeah.
But that's kind of one of the blessings of forward facing though too, is that it does get people stuck in that mindset of I have to see what I'm catching.
It does. Yeah.
And then you're busy working.
I found that fish because of forward facing, but but then after that, I used it very little. I basically found the spot, and I would go every week or every time I was there. I would immediately run right there and just anchor lock, click, and then just fan cast.
Yeah.
And fan cast the area because it was out in the mud. It was associated with some bottom contour, but it was all clean out in the mud and whatever. But I found it with forward facing, but I was, it was fish that was on the bottom. It was just bumps on the bottom that were like swimming around, and I was like, those aren't supposed to be there. I know what that is.
Yeah,
that's gonna be these things. If these things bite, it's gonna be good, and it was good for weeks.
I think that's if I want to see any improvement on forward facing, that's what I want to see.
Bottom definition.
Getting more of that definition off the bottom.
Yeah.
To be able to tell if is that just a contour or is that really a fish? So many times you just see just the slightest little movement on the bottom, and you can't, you just don't know if that's my boat wake moving around or the angle and you throw something over it, and all of a sudden something comes out of the bottom, and you're like, whoa, there was a fish. And we all know that this time of year, so many of those fish, that's what they're doing. They're going out into 30 feet of water and they're sitting in the mud, and they're just laying in there, warming their bellies.
They're in the gut.
Yep.
They're it is so important with early or any time of wintertime fishing. And I found it out the river is the same way. Here it's the same way. They're like, if there's any kind of depression, a big flat, and if there's a channel, they're in that channel, whether it's 1 foot or whether it's 5 foot, but they're in the bottom of that channel.
Yeah.
And that's what it was.
And you'll catch fish and you'll look at their, pectoral fins and their anal fins, and you'll see specks of sand.
Of mud or dirt. Yeah.
So, I mean, there's stupid little things that a lot of times we don't really look at on a fish that, we probably should, because there's a lot of clue what they're doing, what they're eating, the way their bellies feel. Like you can tell they've been eating crawdads.
Yeah.
Right now, I think a lot of these fish they're still all shad eaters at Cap. There's some eating crawdads, but I think they're still on that shad, because my thumb and hand is torn up from their teeth.
Yeah.
So they're still eating soft things.
Right.
I notice as it gets more into the crawdads, their teeth get more worn down. Like sandpaper. Now they're catching on everything. I'm wearing gloves in the morning.
Yeah.
But like unhook one and they're stuck on your gloves because their teeth are like little needles right now still.
Yeah.
So I think they're eating a lot of bluegill and shad still.
Right.
Because
the whole bluegill thing is still happening.
I've been keeping it honest with a jig, and I haven't really nothing to write home about yet.
Yeah, it's
coming.
coming. It's coming.
And yep. I'll be ready. I'm pouring a bunch.
Right on. All right, man. Well, I'll let you go. Thanks a lot. This is super good and technique specific. You threw out a lot of juice. If we want to book you as a guide, how do I get a hold of you?
On Instagram, No Quarter Bass Guide. Just my regular profile, Craig Taylor Fishing.
Okay.
I'm probably gonna end up combining them eventually. I think it's just kind of ridiculous. It's a little redundant to have two because I got to bounce back. But it's funny. I notice I do have certain people following the No Quarter and not the other one. I don't think they know that. So I need to find a way to merge them seamlessly and get the people from No Quarter over there, because I have more reach, I think, on mine, even though I don't have a ton of followers, but I do have more reach. That's where I normally post. And I am going to be switching tactics quite a bit. I'm going to start getting more active on video making. I think I'm going to open up that YouTube window again.
Good.
And more educational, I guess. Not as much years and years ago. I had a YouTube channel and it was more clip oriented. It was like I kind of ran with the surf video format, where you're, showing clips with music in the background. But I think now I'm maybe do a little more POV stuff and do a little more educating, showing people how I'm doing things, because the tournaments are going to probably take more of a backseat locally. So I'm not going to be guarding so much, I guess.
I
want to get more involved in the teaching aspect and hopefully more guiding. The guiding hasn't been full speed.
Well, for me,
this time of year,
I know
it's tough. It's just people don't realize how good the fishing is still right now. It's wintertime.
Oh yeah,
it's good. It's good fishing. I know I can get people on fish right now easily.
Yeah.
And that's why you got to call me after this, and
I'm going to call you right away.
We'll talk. Cause it was good fishing. I mean, I could have had as many as I wanted if I stayed on certain spots.
Wow. Well, I hope that's good. I hope that's the story for me tomorrow. I hope I can get half of that.
It should be.
We got a couple of younger guys, a couple of younger kids, and then so.
Yeah, it's very conducive to that.
All right. Good. Okay, well, let's wrap it up. I'll talk to you later.
All right, sounds good.
Thanks, man.
All right,
see ya.
bye.